Hello, friends, and welcome to the Potluck Podcast. I'm joined by none other than J. Allen Murray, and it's just you and I for now. I don't know if Jared's going to pop on here or not. He's out walking with his wife somewhere, and so he decided to kind of ghost us tonight. And so we have a few things to talk about, but before we dive into that, first things first, Allen Murray, how is you doing?
Well, I am doing well. We're recording on the Lord's Day. It's been a very busy day of ministry. Preached long and hard, as a friend of mine would say. I feel like I've preached my guts out. I was just tired. It's been a good day of ministry, though. God's been very faithful, and the Lord's Day is always a blessing,
Awesome.
Morning and evening. How about yourself?
I literally just got back off of a bit of a road trip. I drove down to Newton, Texas, to preach for the Sabine Neches area. Their kind of local association there. It's actually a very kind of large association in terms of land, and so they had a men's retreat. I got to preach at that, and so I was down in a bit of the bayou, a little bit of the bayou. It's kind of that, about an hour or so from Houston, and just it felt like you were walking through the swamp when you walked outside, because it was very humid. But we had a wonderful time. And then today, I got to preach at a sister church in Kuntz, Texas. I still don't even know if I say that right, but it was at Cornerstone Baptist Church, and had a wonderful time with them. It's a great church. Pastor Scott is doing a wonderful job there. And then I made the long trek home on Highway 69 all the way here. Finally got here, met my family at Texas Roadhouse to kind of thank them for putting up with my departure for the last 3 days. We ate some steak. My daughter had some ribs. Another one had some fried chicken, and we ate that. Couple of rolls, and then now I'm getting to look at your face right before I go to bed tonight on this Lord's Day. So it's good to see you, man. It's good to see you. I'm feeling pretty tired too.
Well, my apologies that you have to end the day by looking at me, and I will never understand the fascination that you and Cornut and so many other people, like people in my church, have with Texas Roadhouse. But we are not here to talk about your love of Texas Roadhouse and their chicken tenders, because I'm just going to assume that's what you had tonight. We are here to talk about the Southern Baptist Convention and a little bit of Southern culture that I'm really looking forward to talking to you about, and hopefully Cornut, if he jumps in here at the end of the podcast. If you have been under a rock, you would not know that everything seems to be up in price right now. Inflation is hitting hard. We've talked about that on the podcast before. But one of the things that Guidestone is telling us is, as inflation is going up, pastors' salaries are not necessarily going up. Guidestone and Lifeway Research, along with Baptist state conventions, have found that compensation for full-time Southern Baptist senior pastors has remained flat over the past 4 years, while the total pay package has decreased. So lots of things are going up except for pastors' salaries. Some of them are staying the same, and some of them are actually going down, seeing that some of their retirement benefits and insurance benefits have fallen by 2.1%. Lifeway says that 41% of Protestant pastors are concerned about their families' financial security. And the report goes on to say that the last 4 years have included 2 good financial years and 2 difficult years for the typical church. And I would assume those 2 difficult years would be 2020 with the onslaught of COVID, and 2022 with the onslaught of inflation. They go on to say a church cannot pay what they do not have, but at the same time, Scripture says that a pastoral worker is worthy of his wages in 1 Timothy 5:18, not what his wages were worth 4 years ago. And so it's tough times for a lot of churches, which in turn means tough times for a lot of pastors. Matt, I know that you love serving pastors as you serve the pastors conference. You serve as a director of missions in an association with lots of small church pastors, medium-sized pastors, large church, and I know you even have some connections with megachurch pastors. And so you're talking to guys all the time. Is this an issue that you see in associational life?
It is. In regular conversations with pastors, a lot of them are sharing that they're feeling the crunch. Some of this was kind of less, many of the guys that I do know have received what we would typically call cost of living raises with their churches. Sometimes even they would still turn them down just because maybe the giving was still kind of plateaued with their church, and so they wanted to be careful and so forth. But in a way, like 3%, if you get that, when as we see in the study from 2018 to 2022 that the consumer price index has jumped 17.6%, I don't know a whole lot of pastors that would say that their pay has increased almost 18%. And so a lot of the guys that I'm talking to, they have pointed out that yes, their churches have been, generous with what they can do. They're not upset, they're not worried about it in that sense. They're not, mad at them. They're certainly not greedy, but they are having to kind of look for other areas to maybe make ends meet. Some of them that I know are picking up bus routes for the school, and so they can get out, do a bus route, make a couple of $100, and it's a little bit extra at the end of the month that can, help them out. And so I'm hearing that a lot. I'm not hearing so much that they are worried about their pay increases as much as maybe they are trying to add a few things or some maybe side gigs, side hustles, if you will, to make ends meet. And so I do hear that a lot. A lot of guys looking for maybe some creative ways to add a little bit to the bottom line. Is that kind of what you're seeing in North Carolina?
Yeah, no doubt. See a lot of guys that are doing that. I have a role. I do sort of. I don't know if you'd call it a consulting role or not, but I work for my local Baptist Association as a network facilitator, as well as pastoring. And I see a lot of guys trying to do this, picking up different ways. I know some guys that do Uber and Lyft and that kind of stuff because let's be honest and real. It's awkward to talk about money a lot of times in the church, whether it's regular giving or your salary. At least for me, I always feel awkward talking about those kinds of things. And so I don't hear a whole lot of guys, like, man, we got to have a raise, but they are trying to make ends meet with what they've got. They're worried about the church's finances because while salary may be a large and even majority portion of some churches' budgets, there's a lot of stuff going on in church other than just paying the pastor, contrary to what some folks think. You've got giving to things like the cooperative program, local associations, state conventions, missions offerings, paying the lights, paying custodians, paying other staff members. If you're a multiple staff church, you're not just thinking about yourself. Hopefully, you're thinking about others. So one of the things that I'm seeing in North Carolina is we've got a great state convention staff. And this article that we're referencing, I've seen several of our state convention folks share this, advocating for our pastors. And so, Matt, I know that you are a pastor at your church, but your primary vocation is not a pastor at First Farmersville. It's as the the associational mission strategist at the Collin Baptist Association. How do you think, if pastors don't want to advocate for themselves with inflation, how do you think maybe associational mission strategists or state convention folks or anybody, what do you think would be helpful to advocate for helping take care of pastors as the financial crunch comes in on them just like it does everybody else?
It's like a lot of things. It's sending out the info, sometimes being the bad guy, being the one that shares these kind of things. I think there was an article out the other day about Joe McKeever, that a lot of guys were sharing, that a lot of maybe pastors were perhaps afraid to share, but a lot of kind of pastor buddies were sharing to remind what a lot of us are facing as pastors. And so sometimes you can be a voice for the guys that aren't really able to say it. But at the same time, I think part of my role is to talk to pastors and share with them some tactful ways that they can advocate for themselves and to give them some tools and some either the compensation studies or why is it that maybe this is lagging behind, or what are some things that we can do to maybe boost that up. And so sometimes it's helping them see how to tactfully address these things without coming across money hungry or doing 12 givings sermons every year, whatever it might be. And so helping them with those, also sharing those on our email blast and on our page. Usually that gets seen by church members and so forth. That helped with Pastor Appreciation Month, for example, this different topic. But a lot of churches just hadn't really heard of that until I came in and we started doing a pastor appreciation coffee deal. And we would share why we were doing that, and to make sure that there wasn't a single pastor in our association that did not feel appreciated in this month, some way, somehow. and a lot of churches then kind of took it on, and they showed ways to appreciate their pastors. And so since we were talking about this, Jared Cornutt finally finished his little walk, but I assume there was probably some football game on that it finally ended up. That's the real story here. But Jared, do you have any thoughts on pastor pay? I know you're at the top end of all of this, so what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, today was my son's 6th birthday, and so we were celebrating that. And then my wife is 30 weeks pregnant, and when she says, "Hey, I need to go on a walk," you say, "All right, let's go on a walk." I have a prediction, and I may be wrong, and hopefully I am in some regard. I think that churches are going to realize in the next 5-10 years that they're going to have to pay more for a pastor, and they're going to have to offer benefits. In fact, I know of a church right now that in rural Alabama that has those offering a pretty nice package. Honestly, they were offering no benefits, and they've had 2 guys turn them down because of that. And so I think they have come back and reorganized, and now they're offering health insurance and some retirement because, well, those are things we need. And so I do believe that maybe if giving does not increase in churches, I think some churches will look a little personnel top heavy for the next 5-10 years because it costs money to hire people, especially, this, Matt, if you live in a place like Dallas right now, our housing market is bonkers. So if you expect a pastor to come here, move, buy a house, be invested in the community that he's pastoring, he can't do that cheaply. And so we'll see what happens. It is interesting that pay has been stagnant. I think that's going to change. It may affect the CP. It may affect what churches give in other regards. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I think it's going to be addressed. Alan, we kind of talked about this when we talked about rural ministry. I think it's something that rural churches are going to have to ask is, are we going to have to offer more pay or benefits to get some guys out here to pastor these churches? And I don't think it's because pastors are money hungry. I think it's because pastors, I'm soon to be a father of 4 children. Matt, you have 4 children. Alan, you have 2 kids. Kids are expensive. Health insurance is expensive. You need to be able to retire one day. You got to be able to buy a house if you don't have a parsonage. And if you don't want your pastor to be bivocational, which most churches do not want their pastor to be bivocational, this is something they're going to have to consider. And I hope that guys like you, Matt, guys in the state offices, Alan, you were talking about, will be able to help in this regard. I think the compensation studies are very helpful to help congregations think through, and hopefully, search teams can be upfront with pastors about what they can offer. Things like that. There's nothing worse than that when you're talking with a church and then you get to the dreaded, like, all right, let's finally talk about compensation here, and you're going, I can't work 80 hours a week for $32,000 a year, no benefits, like some churches do expect. Yeah. So that's probably where I land on it. That's my ramble for the night.
Cool. Well, in kind of different news, Bart Barber and Daniel Dickard and some from the executive committee made their way to New Orleans. That is because we are ever closer to the SBC annual meeting in New Orleans. And so in a moment, we're going to talk about kind of our Southern culture topic is going to maybe be some cuisine known to New Orleans and the South and so forth. But I think we could talk briefly about some of the things that we saw in New Orleans that happened with Bart Barber being there, Daniel being there, Jamie Dew kind of rolling out the red carpet, or maybe the purple carpet, as it were. What sticks out to you, Jay Allen?
Well, the first thing I would like to know is if they took a little bacon and they took a little beans and fought the Methodists in the town of New Orleans. No, I think it's great that the prep work is going on. A lot of folks think that the annual meeting just happens. They have no idea how much foresight and how much planning it takes to visit the site. Not in this article, but I am so glad that Bart sat down in one of the convention center chairs so that we know what the chairs are like. I mean, that was the most pressing issue for me, trying to decide whether I'm going to New Orleans or not, is how hard the seats will be, because the mind can only absorb what the bottom can endure. But I love the partnership. In all seriousness, I love the partnership between New Orleans and some of the local church pastors and even the local Baptist Association that is there preparing for crossover. That it's not just about the annual meeting, it's about sharing the gospel with New Orleans, just like it was shared in Anaheim, just like it was shared in Nashville. And so a lot of great prep work going in. If you're not aware of how much prep goes into one of these things, talk to some of these guys. Maybe pray a little harder for Bart or for Willie McLaurin or Jonathan Howe or even Jamie Dew. I'm sure New Orleans is going to be expecting an influx of people coming to visit the campus.
Yeah, indeed. I got to go to this event, but it was obviously for Anaheim last year. And what is neat about it is what we're kind of seeing here on the ride up is what we know about. The them up on the stage talking about maybe their theme for the annual meeting or their theme for the pastors conference or maybe some things they're excited about. What that was meant to do was to kind of drum up some local support and what used to be called, I think, the local arrangements committee. They're now calling the local encouragement team. And this is a team that is trying to recruit all of the local volunteers needed to prepare for the annual meeting and to make the annual meeting happen. We see what happens really on the stage, but there's greeters, there's security, there's all the other things that have to happen, and that requires a ton of volunteers. And so, thoughts and prayers go out to Jay Adkins, who is kind of leading that charge. And so we want to sincerely pray for him. But part of this is to kind of drum up some of that support, get some excitement for the local people because we're coming to you. And so it is a chance for them to be able to have a part in this. And then kind of behind the scenes, that's where like Daniel and Bart will be with like Willie and Jonathan Howe and maybe like the convention center staff. And they're looking at the main hall and they're seeing where the stage is going to be, how many screens they can do, where the speakers need to be, where the booths are going to be, all of that kind of stuff. And they'll go through the different kind of side rooms for the different ballrooms it's going to be, maybe the Swibbits luncheon or the Southeastern luncheon, and they start kind of getting a plan now. And what is just so amazing to me is how much of a well-oiled machine this really is because right when the annual meeting is done and they're packing everything up, they're already planning for this. And they're already on the field, they're already making the plans, and all of this stuff is already underway. And if they weren't doing this now, then what we would have in June would not remotely be possible. And so, yes, it gets some local excitement, but also we want to pray for Bard and the EC and all of that because there's a lot of logistical things behind the scenes that can be nightmares, right? You're trying to get thousands upon thousands of people into one space and making sure they have plenty of room to park, plenty of room to sit, plenty of room to go to the bathroom, all of the different things that you need to do. And so this is part of what they do when they're on these site visits. Jared?
Really glad that we're going to have comfortable seats because we spend a lot of time in those seats. And I spend a lot of time next to Matt Hensley when I'm in those seats. And so I'll got to be comfortable at least. I usually enjoy the conversation with Rebecca and then get annoyed by the side eyes I get from Matt during the annual meeting. But no, I'm excited about it. My biggest question is, am I driving or flying to New Orleans? I was just looking up flights. They're not cheap right now. About $400 from Dallas round trip to fly to New Orleans. Surely that will come down some between now and then. Matt, what is it? About a 9-10 hour drive to New Orleans from Dallas?
It depends. If Bart is driving, you're probably going the speed limit, and you're going to have to hear all about church history and so forth. And so that's up to you. If you and I are going, and we'll go in the Mustang, we'll get there in like 3 hours, baby.
All right. Well, I'm riding with you then. I'm looking forward to it. I might take my golf clubs down there and use the golf club that I acquired from Matt Hensley that I am smacking the mess out of the golf ball with right now. It has been a very good club for me.
Jay,
there's a third option.
Train?
We are seriously considering taking a train because it'll be a lot cheaper. It'll take longer.
How many hours?
I think I want to think it was like 12 or 18 hours, but it's a long drive anyway. I've never driven straight to New Orleans from here, but I have driven to Gulfport, and that's like a 13-hour drive, and it's another 3 hours from Gulfport to New Orleans because I have driven from Gulfport to New Orleans.
Can you get a sleeper car cheaper than a plane right now? Wow,
much cheaper. Yeah, much cheaper.
And if your kids are going, they'd love that.
For sure. So you might want to take a train. I know that's old-fashioned, but our friends over at SPC this week, they talked about how they used to publicize how you could take a train to the annual meeting. It might be an option for you.
I had a very bad train experience in Branson, Missouri this summer. And so the scenic Branson Railway, which has no scenic views at all. So it's a bit deceptive there. And it also says it's air-conditioned. I don't think that was true either. And so that's like sitting on a non-sitting view, non-air conditioned train with your pregnant wife, looking at you going, and we spent how much on this?
Yeah. Well, while we are in New Orleans, we're also going to get to eat. And Jay Allen, you were looking forward to this topic specifically about a certain thing that started with the letter C that you wanted to discuss. So let's talk about that.
Well, sometimes it starts with the letter C, and sometimes it starts with the letter M. They're sometimes affectionately called mud bugs.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about crawfish, crayfish, crawdads, crawdaddies, mud bugs. They got a lot of different names. And of course, that's something that they're really well known for in the swamps of Louisiana. And so I'll talk in just a moment. Matt, you're looking forward to eating some crawfish, right?
I am not. And that is the gist of my contribution to this portion.
Have you had crawfish before?
No.
Okay.
No.
You got to try it.
Immediately, no.
It's a lot. Here's my problem with crawfish. It's a lot of work for a little reward.
Nope.
But when you get that head, you suck it that. Oh, it's good.
No.
Mm-mm. Yeah. So that is delicious. It is a lot of work. For not a whole lot of reward. I think shrimp are much easier to eat and have a whole lot more meat to them. But you can buy crawfish already boiled, already peeled, and a lot of different things can be used for crawfish. It's not just the crawfish boil. Down in Louisiana, they've got a really famous dish called crawfish etouffee, and that's something I've never eaten that I would love to try there. I know it gets thrown into a lot of things. I've had boiled crawfish. Here in North Carolina, people do crawfish boils here. I think they're a whole lot more prevalent in the Gulf, even in Texas where you guys are. Typically, they're imported here. We have crawfish. I could walk right behind or right in front of my house and set a trap overnight, and in the morning there would be crawfish in it in the ditches and the canals that are around my house, but they're certainly not as prolific here as they are down there. But there's one dish I shared with you, Matt, that I think you might enjoy. I'm not one of those. I'm not a lobster mac and cheese guy. I think lobster mac and cheese is way overrated because lobster is way overrated. I will die on this hill. I think it's overpriced and overrated.
Wrong.
But man, $22 a pound for big crawfish. That's,
look, I'm not saying it's over. It is expensive, but it is delicious.
It's delicious. I love it. I mean, I could eat shellfish to the point I turn pink like a flamingo. I'm from the coast of North Carolina. But I for the money, I'd much rather have shrimp or oysters or scallops or clams or a lot of other things. Anyway, lobster mac and cheese to me is overrated. But I had some crawfish mac and cheese at one of the annual meetings of my local Baptist Association 3 years ago. And it was one of the best things I've ever eaten in my life. And so crawfish are great on their own. They are a lot of work, but man, you can use them just like you would shrimp. Some people fry them. I've seen crawfish po' boys. I've never had that. That would be really good. So besides the beignets, I don't know, powdered sugar might be too much for you, Matt. But besides the beignets, my goal will be to try to get you to eat at least one crawfish in New Orleans.
It's not going to happen. I already had.
If you will do the one chip challenge, you can eat the crawfish.
That's spicy.
Crawfish is spicy. If you
ain't
do
oysters?
Right.
No.
Man, this is ridiculous.
Oysters, they're sea boogers.
It's not liver mush.
You ain't sea boogers.
Come on.
Yeah, I'm out.
How about we have a crawfish boil on the POTLUCK podcast?
Okay, I'll eat
that. Would be great.
I'll eat the corn. All right, send us out, Jared.
Well, I did not do the opening, but I will do the close. Thanks for joining us, friends. We hope you had your fill, your full. Don't really know what we talked about. A little bit about crawfish, a little bit about salaries, a little bit about New Orleans. But we hope it was edifying and good to you. We hope you'll join us next time. Same Baptist time, same Baptist hour. And as always, stay Baptist, my friends.